Hell Priest Elliot Spencer was born in 1887. While not much is known about his early life, he would at some point serve France during World War I. At some point, he would lose faith in humanity after witnessing the inhumane acts of war, where he would become jaded and leave the war. After traveling to British India, he would obtain himself the limited configuration box, but in doing so, he would unfortunately be turned into a Cenobite known as Pinhead. After many years, a man named Frank Kahn would solve the configuration, where Frank would endure the ritual of torture and dismemberment. However, a piece of Frank would unfortunately be left behind, where he would manage to escape the Leviathan realm. However, after a year, Christie would find the configuration and would unintentionally summon the Cenobites, and after some negotiating, Christie would talk Pinhead into sparing her in exchange for Frank Kahn, where she would lead the Cenobites to Frank, where they would torture and dismember him. But before they could move on to Christie, she would reverse the configuration and would send the Cenobites back to the Leviathan realm. However, Pinhead wouldn't have to wait long due to return to the Leviathan realm after being summoned by Dr. Philip Channard, only to end with Pinhead turning Philip into a Cenobite. Pinhead and the Cenobites would corner Christie, only for Christie to remind Elliot of his past, which would remind him of the person who he once was, where he and his Cenobites would do battle with Channard, but ultimately end with Spencer being struck down, ending Pinhead's legacy for good. Not much is known about the unknown alien, but it will at some point take the body of Jedediah Morningside, where over the years it will become known as Tallman, where he will begin reanimating deceased corpses into his own army of undead. But this wouldn't go unnoticed by a young boy named Michael, who he would take an interest in. But once he would prove the Tallman's existence and see the Tallman himself, he and his friend Reggie would wage a one-man war against the Tallman and his army. But eventually, after 10 years, the vast majority of humanity would fall victim to the Tallman's plague and army, whereas the war between Reggie and Tallman continues. Hi, how's it going? Been a while, hasn't it? Well, what's up? We're here with a highly anticipated match I've been waiting to do for months, with a horror movie showdown between two icons of horror, with Pinhead from the Hellraiser movies going against Tallman from the Phantasm movies. Now, just to set some ground rules, when it comes to research material, I'll only be sticking to the first few films with Clive Barker's involvement for Pinhead's research. And I'll be pulling some materials from the books mainly to close any gaps there are, since Pinhead as of now has about 20 movies. So I think that should really explain a lot. While Tallman as of now has about 5 movies, with the last being released back in 2016. And as a final note, I won't be going over their physical capabilities since neither have really shown anything noteworthy, and Pinhead mainly prefers to use his powers from distance. But if you were to really push me on it, I'll give the slight edge to Tallman by default, since he at least has showings to go off of that puts him above the well-built adult man. So let's start with their weapons and equipment. Pinhead doesn't carry many weapons, aside from carrying a belt of bladed weapons, but his iconic weapons are his chains, which he can manipulate at will from any directions, which also have hooks at the end of them to pull and tear apart his victims. So Tallman doesn't carry much in terms of gear. He only carries orbs, which can lock onto targets. These orbs can sprout bladed prongs to latch onto targets before drilling into them, or even small saws. He can control 1 to a swarm of these orbs at a time, and while these orbs may not seem like much, they can take blunt force trauma to high caliber gunfire. But they do have a weakness to a high frequency sound wave. He can summon open a portal, which can be used to summon another copy of the Tallman, and presumably his dwarfs. Yeah, this is a pretty cut and dry category. Now, could Pinhead destroy or even damage these orbs? Yes, except not easily. Heck, Reggie has consistently struggled to destroy these orbs. The only weakness these orbs have are high frequency sound waves that Pinhead 1 will have knowledge about, and 2 won't be able to replicate. Also, these orbs are small and fast, giving Tallman an advantage in speed and maneuverability, while Pinhead's chains are more effective against stationary opponents. Now, you'll realize that include the Senbais, and well, I mainly consider them a special ability for Pinhead since he can summon them. But can they do something? Maybe, but my point still stands that Tallman still has an overwhelming advantage in speed and maneuverability, especially since he doesn't have to get in close and can also summon a swarm of these, which were able to overwhelm Reggie. So I really have no choice but to give the edge to Tallman and weapons. Pinhead has a large selection of abilities. Like I said before, he can manipulate chains from any direction. He has telekinesis, allowing him to push or pull things to or from him. His ability to shapeshift, create illusions, he can manipulate matter at will, and even turn people into Senbais, which is something very rare to do since the only way a soul can be turned into a Senbai is from the Leviathan entity. And due to being the Hell Priest, his abilities are the strongest among all the Senbais. Speaking of which, he does have his own Senbais, such as Barbal, Chatterer, and the female Senbai. Yes, really, don't ask. Who are implied to have the same abilities as Pinhead. I'll also be granting him the Senbais that he created when he returned to Earth, such as the CD Senbai, who can throw discs that can kill people in a single throw, the Barbie Senbai, who carries a glass and mixer filled with gasoline, which he can ignite with his fire breath, and the Camera Senbai, who can somehow create explosions through anything with electricity. While Senbais are stronger than the average well-built adult and can take gunfire, Senbais can still be brought down by severe injuries that can put down you or me. So Tallman has a small yet effective capabilities. He possesses the ability of telekinesis to push or pull objects to or from him. He can somehow immobilize a target by touching them. And as I mentioned before, he can summon a portal to summon his dwarves, or to summon a new body after his current body is too badly damaged or simply destroyed, which also acts as his way of transportation, and he also has the ability to shapeshift. Yes, this is a pretty messy category to break down, so buckle up, we have a lot to go over. Now as for the main abilities, Pinhead would hold a solid advantage, due to his chains giving him a range advantage, and on top of that, you can make a solid case for Pinhead's telekinesis being stronger than Tallman's, since Pinhead is the strongest Senbai due to his status Hell Priest, likely given to him by the Leviathan. And not to mention, he also has his own Senbais, which also have the same abilities as he does. So that evens the odds out. Now I know what you're thinking, Winter, these are only a few Senbais against a literal army. What can they do? Well, glad that you asked. Like I said, they have some abilities such as chain manipulation, telekinesis, and illusions. Oh yeah, remember when I said Pinhead can turn humans into Senbais? Its dwarves that Tallman uses are just reanimate corpses. And if you want to push it, you can also argue that the Leviathan can turn their souls into Senbais too. And before you ask, no, the dwarves aren't doing anything to the Senbais or Pinhead. They easily got no diff by Michael and Reggie, and the mercenaries who presumably didn't know about the Tallman or his army, and this is consistent. So it's really just Tallman against Pinhead and his Senbais. Yes, he does have hundreds if not thousands of copies of his bodies, but that doesn't change the fact that Pinhead can simply turn his dwarves against him, gives them the same powers that he has. And this is before we get into Pinhead, and by extension, the Senbais' other powers. If Tallman consistently gets overpowered by Michael and Reggie, who knew very little about him by the second movie, what does that mean for him against someone who can mess with his mind and manipulate matter? So at the end of the day, Pinhead simply has a better kit for combat, so I give Pinhead the edge in special abilities. It's unknown to say how skilled Elliot would be after becoming Pinhead, but due to Pinhead and his soundbites being shown to be very cunning and intelligent, likely done by the Leviathan, Pinhead would be an exceptional strategist, such as how he ambushed Frank in the attic in the first movie, and how he manipulated Christy, saying that he would spare her. As a tactician, he's a ruthless combatant, not willing to spare anyone as long as it fulfills his pleasure. Shown when he turned several people from a nightclub into soundbites to wreak havoc throughout the streets. The Tallman doesn't have any particular approach, only ambushing specific targets, but mainly allowing his dwarves to ambush them, or sending his orbs like heat-seeking missiles, or sending an already turned victim to ambush or slow down his pursuers, which is exactly what he did to Reggie and Michael throughout the years. But even when he's forced to fight, he usually allows his orbs to fight for him, along with his dwarves and minions. Since he likely has no combat experience, shown how he was consistently defeated, if not caught off guard, by Reggie and Michael throughout the 5 movies. But this is also likely due to having tens, if not thousands, of spare bodies to take his place, should he be taken out. Well, fuck, they're also similar here too. Both like to use their powers and abilities to manipulate and or take out their targets. However, when all is said and done, I feel like Pinhead has been a bit more successful than Tallman, but Tallman at the same time is more cunning and crafty. But bear in mind, this was because he has thousands of spare bodies and due to reanimating corpses to slow down his pursuers. Honestly, this is a category that could go either way. Tallman isn't dumb, especially how he managed to catch both Michael and Reggie off guard several times throughout the movies, and on top of that, manipulates them consistently. But at the same time, the same exact thing can be said about Pinhead, as well as the Cenobites, who are highly intelligent demons who have environmental awareness and situational awareness. And they're not exactly merciful when their mind is set. So, for the first time, I honestly don't see one having the advantage over the other. So I declare both Pinhead and Tallman equals in combat skills and tactics. Let's just say that while exploring an abandoned warehouse, the Tallman finds the Lamech configuration box, and after some time he manages to solve it, where the space around him begins to distort, where a wall opens up into the Leviathan realm. However, something feels off about the summoner, but more questions the lack of preparations. No altar, human remains, nothing, only for Tallman to laugh as he extends his hand out for him. Join me. Humanity has fallen along with the world. No. How about you join me? Pinhead responds by piercing his body with chains before tearing him apart, leaving yellow blood spatters all along the ground and walls, with his remains scattered across the floor. Despite the questionable contents, Pinhead goes to leave, but instead is met by another Tallman. Turn around, the Cenobite's hunch is proven correct that something is off about this man. Well, if you don't join me, then I have no use for you. The Tallman opens a portal as his doors are summoned. The Cenobite does the same, summoning his Cenobites, who tears the doors apart with their chains, while Pinhead keeps the Tallman occupied, who manages to hold back the Hell Priest's chains with his telekinesis. But this is what he was hoping for, and not missing a beat, Elliot turns the spilled blood into yellow spikes before firing them into the alien, making him stumble back. Not even having to communicate, the CD Cenobite knows what to do and reels the Tallman with discs. This process continues, but as the battle drags on, no matter what the demons do to the Tallman, he always comes back seemingly unharmed, but more aware of their capabilities. But now, he starts using his orbs, which are proving to be a problem for the Cenobites, since they're small and fast, but at least manageable with teamwork, at least until the Tallman starts using small swarms of his orbs. However, that is until instead of killing the Tallman's dwarves, Pinhead starts turning them into disfigured Cenobites, now wearing black robes instead of the brown ones that they were dressed in. Before the Tallman can realize the gravity of the situation, he's once again torn apart, but not by the Cenobite, but by his own dwarves who have been turned. Taking his offense, he sends off a large swarm of orbs that emerge from his portal, which seems to completely turn the tide of the battle, taking out many Cenobites as orbs cut and drill into them. However, the battle comes to a halt when an orb drills into Pinhead, having sent an orb through a portal behind him, with the last thing that he hears,
"It's never over."
As the last remaining Cenobites are taken out, the Tallman has their bodies taken back to his lab, where he reanimates them as undead. And with that, I declare Tallman, the Dimensional Overlord, the winner. Well, fuck me, this was a headache and a half to do, because honestly, you can make a strong argument for either one winning. However, me personally, I don't see Pinhead winning, at least in a chance encounter, since he simply just doesn't have an answer for Tallman's thousands of spare bodies. And let's be real here, if Pinhead had access to the Leviathan, he would win, since in that case it's reversed. Tallman isn't being a cosmic entity that can turn souls into Cenobites. But if this is just a 1v1, then Pinhead would win if we remove the factor of Tallman's tens of thousands of spare bodies, which he just has on standby. So at the end of the day, Pinhead really does have a way to keep Tallman down for good. It would be one thing if he could either 1. Damage him from a conceptual level, 2. Damage him spiritually, or 3. Hypothetically remove the concept of his thousands of spare bodies. But honestly, if you think Pinhead could win, by all means, let me know your thoughts. I spent a good week to think about this before I scripted the fight, and honestly, I'm drawing a blank. And as I said, be sure to like, comment, subscribe, follow me on Twitter if you care about that for more future content. Also, before I go, I'd like to give a shout out to the usual zapping, 3Tomics Gamer, King Cameron, Spy Dante, and Rory932, who has recently begun uploading again, and a newcomer to the Verse series, Solus Spartan, who managed to impress me with his premiere match, zapping McTaylor vs Anton Sugar, which I would highly suggest checking out. And with that said, I'll see y'all next time.
Okay then, by all means, come closer. You'll have to be faster. My stand is more powerful than any other. Even without the world's tremendous power and speed, it would still outclass your pitiful Star Platinum.
Your stand has a lot in common with my Star Platinum. We're not long-range fighters, but we have incredible power and precision.
If I'm being honest, I've always had a desire to see how much stronger the world is compared with Star Platinum. But it seems pointless to compare them now.
Wait, are you serious? All you did was give me a love tap on the leg. And you ripped my 20,000 yen pants.
For the life of me, I can't figure out why you Joestars are so stubborn. Fine, I shall accept your cheap provocation. Let our comparison resume.
I'm being tested. In a moment, we will find out if I'm prepared to vanquish my past.
We really only grow once we've conquered our phantoms, wouldn't you say? How lovely to see you again, Jean-Pierre Polnareff. I know you!
Diavolo!
Sickness